Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Green Films. Recently, I watched A Quiet Place Part 2. Now, the first Quiet Place was actually pretty decent. It was beautifully shot, it had great characters, and had great acting. It was tense. It had great scenes of character development. It looked great. It sounded great when there was noise. And it was actually pretty scary when the creatures were around. It wasn't like terrifying, but it was still pretty scary and nerve wracking. It even had cool little details like this dinner scene where you can see they're eating soft food instead of crunchy. It's not like life changing cinema or anything, but it's still pretty great. Definitely better than most horror movies that come out every year. So, how's part 2? Well, I just want to give a quick disclaimer before we continue. I will not be spoiling part 2. However, the general plot synopsis of part 2 can probably spoil part 1 for you. So if you don't want part 1 spoilers because you haven't seen it yet, click off the video and come back after you've watched it. With that out of the way, let's talk about A Quiet Place Part 2. This movie follows the remaining members of the Abbott family as they try to find fellow survivors in the world that was torn apart by the creatures who hunt by sound. This movie introduces a lot of things that I'm a fan of. There's a flashback at the start of the movie of the first day the creatures landed, which I don't think is really a spoiler because it's in all the trailers. It's an exhilarating sequence that I think could work as its own short film. This movie introduces new characters, such as Cillian Murphy's Emmett, who's great. He starts off as like this pessimist who's like, oh, there's no one out there who's worth saving, and he sort of wants to stick to himself, and then he can't help the Abbott family. And then he changes as the film goes on. He becomes a little less pessimistic, and he forms a little bond with Regan. So that was cool to see him go through a little bit of an arc. Speaking of Regan, she's also pretty great in this movie. She goes on this little adventure with Emma to try and find survivors, and, well, she was great in the previous movie, and she's great in this movie too. She's given more of a leading role in this movie, like she was already one of the main characters of the previous movie, but she's essentially the main character of this movie. So it was cool to see some more Regan action, I guess. The acting is as great as it was in the previous movie. For example, early on in the movie, one of the kids steps in a bear trap, and his screams are so good, you would swear they actually made the kid step in a bear trap for the scene. Once again, the movie is shot beautifully, it looks great, it sounds great. The monsters are again threatening, although they're not in this movie as much as they were in the previous movie. But when they are, it's great, scary fun. There's this exhilarating scene on a boat dock where the creatures are just attacking a bunch of people and Emmett's in the water, like trying to grab onto something, and the creatures are wreaking havoc in the background. It's all great stuff. This movie is not flawless, however. There are some issues I have with it. For example, one of the main characters decides to do something, and you're not really sure what he's trying to do, and it doesn't really accomplish anything. All it does is attract a monster to his location. Also, the ending feels a bit abrupt. It feels like the movie has 10 more minutes to go by the time it ends. However, I am willing to look past these issues, as the rest of the movie is so well made and tense. Is it as good as the first movie? I'm not so sure. I might have to think about that a bit. But it's still a great sequel and well worth your time if you enjoyed the first one. Especially considering some of the scenes, such as the Regan train scene, are so good they could be short movies on their own. Well, thanks for watching my A Quiet Place Part 2 review. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want, leave a comment telling me what you thought about the video. And I'll see you next time. Bye!